Hello, hello, hello. It is Tuesday, believe it or not, July the 30th. I have no idea where this month has gone. I'm Char Nolan, a member of the instructional team here at Rouxbe. Thank you so much for coming to my live event. A couple of things to go over and talk about before we dive into today's questions. Um, the first one is I wanted to just briefly talk about the use of vinegar. And I see a lot of people using balsamic vinegar in a dressing and then complaining about its appearance. And that's why I like to use a white balsamic. This happens to be a cucumber melon. There are many other flavors available. You can go online. I buy these at a vinegar store in Philadelphia. They don't change the flavor profile of your dish, but it gives it a great appearance. So think about white balsamic vinegar so that you can enjoy the appearance of your next salad dressing. So that's number one. And the other thing, I see a lot of people are using air fryers on the, not for a Rouxbe assignment, but for something they might be doing on the outside. And I just want to mention that you can get these liners at the dollar store. They are BPA free. I use them once and then I flip it and then use it another time. It protects from the lining that is in your air fryer. They're very reasonable. You get 30 of them for $1.25. Yes, you can use parchment paper, but then you've got to cut it. So I just wanted to mention that. And we have some exciting things to go over today. And let's just get into the questions so that we can all get back to watching the Olympics, because I think there's a men's basketball game coming soon. So this first question is from Cindy. Hi, welcome. And she has a question about mushrooms. And no, don't eat them raw. So I think if we look back to the age of our grandparents who were foraging in the woods, probably there was some wife's tale about not eating them raw. And I can tell you that my own grandmother, when she cooked mushrooms, she always put a silver quarter in the pan, because if the quarter turned black, it meant that the mushrooms were bad. Fast forward to 2024, you can eat mushrooms raw. They're a little bit more potent in terms of their vitamin and nutrient kick. So in a salad raw, or if you want to put them in a crudité platter or wherever, terrific, terrific, terrific. So great question. Don't be afraid of them. Just don't go foraging your own without a deep knowledge of mushrooms. So that was a very good question. So Chef Fran is back in town. She was in Mexico at Rancho La Puerta, where she taught cooking classes for an entire week. And how fortunate was everyone to be in a class with Chef Fran. So Chef Fran has a question about how do you clean mushrooms? So the first thing is, mushrooms are a very moist and porous vegetable. So they don't need any more water whatsoever. And if you want your mushrooms to go bad very quickly, do not wash them. So you can do a couple of things. And I don't have any fresh mushrooms with me today, but I'm going to do a reenactment. And this is a no scrub little sponge. And all you do is just dust them off. And the dirt particles will come off and you will be fine and clean and healthy. If you don't want to use something like this, you could use, there are mushroom brushes, and a mushroom brush will also very daintily take off any debris that might be on your mushroom. You can also go to the dollar store and get a baby hairbrush for $1. And those soft, fine bristles will also remove any debris that will be on your mushrooms. So Fran, that of course is a good question. And it's really funny because sometimes when Fran and I are in circles with non-plant-based people and we talk about mushrooms, the discussion always comes up about wash them or not wash them. I also wanted to say that for those of you who follow us on Instagram, if you go to @RubyPlants, one word, excuse me, you'll see a really good carousel of photos about the no oil saute and has some very, very good tips in it. And you'll also notice that the mushrooms are vibrant and white and clean and strong. I'm going to say that if you are doing the mushroom assignment, do not buy pre-sliced packaged mushrooms, because as mushrooms darken, the flavor, they're not as receptive to flavor as they are if you slice them yourself. So just a little mushroom 101, one of my favorite things to talk about. Very good question, Fran. Thanks for being here today, and welcome back. I'll see you this week, I hope. I love this next question because I think that, and again, this is personal, but I think that it's important to think about what you like to eat and be more concerned with something that fits into your diet, and also become a very good label reader. Now, I'll give you an example, and that would be if you made a dish with a cup of tofu in it and a cup of broccoli and a cup of quinoa, you would have a dish that contained 30 grams of protein, which is almost a daily requirement for one person. So start reading labels, look at legumes, and some vegetables that are high in protein include broccoli and asparagus. And don't forget beans. And the other thing I like to talk about is making sure that you read labels so that you can see the protein content. So a half a cup of beans is 8 grams of protein. So that is a good amount of protein for a half a cup of beans. And the question is, who eats a half a cup of beans? Another good source of protein is going to be some quinoa. We have some great quinoa salad recipes in the Plant Pro course. A cup of cooked quinoa contains 9 grams of protein. So it's all about looking at labels and introducing some new foods into your kitchen, which I think is very, very helpful. And one more thing, brown rice has protein in it. So there's protein in everything. We need to move away from thinking that there's only protein in animal products. And if you start reading labels, you will be amazed at the plethora of ingredients that are very protein rich that are plant-based. And last but not least, because who doesn't like a little dessert? These are some dates. These are Rancho Meladuco dates, my favorite dates, now available at Walmart. 2 dates contains a gram of protein. So you have 2 dates. You're going to stuff it with a little bit of some peanut butter. This happens to be Teddy's, family-owned business, terrific, terrific flavor. And then you're going to melt some chocolate. And this chocolate, there are 2 grams of protein in a serving. So if you had 2 dates and this 2 pieces of this candy would, I'm calling it candy, it's not really candy, would contain about 10 grams of protein. So it's looking at labels and also finding things that you like and that taste good to you. So I hope that I answered that question for you. So that is a very, very good question. I'm bending down a little bit so that I can see the next question. Okay. Let me just go back to this question one more time from Cecilia. If you read Dr. John McDougall's books, all of his diets are based on carbohydrates like potatoes and sweet potatoes and whole wheat pastas and things like that. So I would share that information with your nutritionist or registered dietitian and see what they have to say about that. There are so many factors in the plant-based world and how they plug into nutrition. And I have to say from a personal point of view that it's really important to find a registered dietitian or nutritionist who is plant-based and understands all of the pillars of what exactly is going on. Pardon me for 1 second. Excuse me. Here we go. And I'm back. So the next question is, this is from Julianne, who confesses to being a picky vegetarian, and she struggles with protein intake and weight stability. I think that the questions that we just went over, Julianne, about reading labels and finding protein and things like that, Dr. Esselstyn always says to include 6 cups of leafy greens a day in what you eat. So I think adding more greens to your diet, it certainly helps to make you feel more satiated, and you can make a beautiful, beautiful salad and add many of the proteins that we have just talked about. So I hope, I don't think you're really a picky eater. I think that, like I say to everybody, you have to find foods that you love that are plant-based, and find spices that you like, and everything else like that. Very good question. The next question, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, is from Nike. And she wants to know how she should switch from being an omnivore to becoming whole food plant-based eater. So my first thing to say is, if there's anybody here today that has some suggestions that you would like to add to the conversation, feel free to type in a response. I find, and I have been plant-based for 15 years, I find that there are 2 kinds of people who jump in the deep end, and I'm one of those people, or people who hold onto the railing and tiptoe in to what it is that they want to learn about being plant-based. I think I've seen many, many people who complicate the process much more than it needs to be complicated. And hitting your favorite grocery store, stocking up on some grains, doing some batch cooking, making beautiful food. And I have shared this before. I was plant-based for about 5 years, and I had never in my life eaten tofu because I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like its texture. It just wasn't for me. And then, lo and behold, there's the Rouxbe roasted tofu assignment. And when I made that recipe, marinating it in some low sodium tamari with some liquid smoke or smoked paprika, and marinating it and then roasting it. And when it came out, I remember in my assignment, I made a banh mi sandwich, and I thought it was the most delicious thing that I ate. So I think having an open mind, finding a recipe that you like, and adding new foods to your diet, and be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself, because for some people, this is such a 180 from the life that you were living that learning new things sometimes does take time. But keep coming back to our live events here on Rouxbe, because all of the instructors have a different story to tell. With that said, I did want to share, and I was so excited, that I was invited to be a speaker at Rip Esselstyn's Plant Stock, which is happening on August 16 through 18. And you can either go in person or you can do it virtually. And I've known Rip for as long as I've been plant-based, and consider myself very fortunate to also be friends with almost everyone in his family, and sort of receive some inner guidance, because excuse me, I often think that my trajectory would be very different if I didn't know all the pillars that I've been able to learn from being part of, working with the Esselstyns as I have throughout my plant-based career. So hope you can make it. We're going to make it into a podcast as well. Rip was very interested in the whole Rouxbe process and how people learn so much about cooking whole food plant-based, cooking whole food plant-based no oil. I did a live mushroom saute so that everybody could see how easy it is to saute without oil. So check the link, and I hope that you can join and be part of the fun. I was almost tickled pink to be part of the process. So this is from Anna C. Hi, Anna C. How are you? So Anna had a really good question, because if you go out into the World Wide Web, everybody has a different opinion and a different method and a different recipe for doing everything. So her question is, should she use water, as a recipe suggests, for soaking chia seeds, or should she use milk? So because I believe that we really live in a scientific world, here is what the water version looks like. You can see it's very, very congealed. It would be perfect for using as an egg replacement in a baking dish or whatever. And here's the milk version. And I think if I hold it against my black coat, it's not as congealed as the water. So my sense would be, I see where you're going with the water. If I were making a pudding, I have in the past mixed half water and half milk so that it absorbs well. Water absorbs better because it is less viscous than let's say a plant milk might be. So I think it's a matter of choice is what I think. So I think the water method, though, is probably a little bit more successful. And the other thing I just wanted to say about chia seeds, again, there are a lot of crazy recipes out on the internet. Never eat them raw. Never eat them raw, because they can get stuck in your mucus linings and then they can expand, and it's not the safest of situations. So that's just a little red flag alert of Chia Seeds 101. So let me know what you do, Anna. But I'm sure a pudding tastes great with a little date syrup and other delicious ingredients. So this is great. And I gave you the link to plant stock. And this is a great question from Mary F. Mary, there are many, many, many ways to bake whole food, plant-based, without using butter. I make beautiful corn muffins without using butter, because I will use chia seeds as my fat, as my binder. I will use applesauce. I will use bananas. I will use sweet potatoes. It's all a matter of finding recipes that you like and recipes that will work for you. So it's almost as though you have to push a button to change your mindset about baking. You don't have to say goodbye to baking. You just have to find a new way to bake that includes using plant milk, flaxseed eggs or chia seed. I've got some flax meal here today because this also makes a very, very good egg replacement. So that's one way to do it. And pardon my dog, because it must mean that the mailman is here. So sorry about that. And then Mary, these are great questions, Mary. I love getting them. Thank you so much. What could she use to replace butter? There is the onion butter, cashew butter recipe here in Rouxbe, and that is very, very nice. But remember that the cashews still have fat in them, so I don't know exactly why you're following a whole food plant-based diet, but if it is for cardiac reasons, you do want to cut back a little bit on the nuts. And I want to show you one other thing that I made today to show, because it's another question that Mary has. Let me get it out of the freezer. Okay, here we go. So this is for Mary about her pie crust and biscuit question. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take a plain glass 4-ounce bowl like this, and you're going to line it. You can use saran wrap. This is that gluey Glad wrap that I think works very well, because when you line it, whatever you put in it will come out very easily and you won't get frustrated. So what happens is that here is a half a cup of almond butter, and This really needs about 4 or 5 hours to really freeze, so to speak. And when it comes out of the freezer, you're going to cut it into cubes, just like you would cut butter or margarine or whatever. So I make biscuits with almond butter and they come out perfectly. I have made pie crust with almond butter and it comes out very well. Is it flaky and crispy like like your taste buds remember a pie crust being? No. Does it work? Yes. Is it more nutrient dense? Yes. Because remember that there's lots of protein in that nut butter. And here's the nut butter I used, 8 grams of protein in 2 tablespoons. So you're making a pie crust that is very nutrient dense. And if you follow the steps of rolling your dough and docking your dough when it's in the pie plate, trust me when I tell you that it will work. So I love these questions. They're really good. So thank you so much for that. And regarding mushrooms, I included an article that I wrote not too long ago for Veg World magazine. I have often told you that I live about 40 minutes. In my head, it's 20, but in real life, it's 40 minutes from the mushroom capital of the world. And I had the opportunity to spend a day with a mushroom farmer and learn so much. So back to that original question about mushrooms. When you get home from the grocery store, and remember, you're picking the loose ones and you're putting them into a plastic bag. But when you get home, you want to put them into a brown paper bag because the mushrooms like to breathe. They will suffocate and get slimy in a plastic bag. So put them in a brown paper bag, a sandwich bag, and then put them in the crisper or at the back of your refrigerator where you have the most constant temp. So that should be very helpful to you. Back to Mary. I think we covered that pie crust question. And I like to look at whole food, plant-based, no oil as the epic 101 of science in the kitchen, because you're teaching yourself new ways to make things. I also suggest that being a student with Chef Fran in Essential Vegan Desserts is probably something that you would enjoy, because Chef Fran is the expert baker in our roster of directors and instructors. So that would be my input for that. So thank you again. And one more from Mary. So back to baking. I'm going to encourage you to Google a site that says what to use instead of oil for baking. And you're going to see chia seeds, flax seeds, applesauce, bananas. And it's funny, a couple of years ago, I was working on a grant with the CDC. And the number one thing that everyone in my community wanted to know how to do was make cornbread. And so I made little bags with every ingredient that they needed. And then they went home and they made them. And then they had to bring one back in the next week. And everyone was surprised that it, quote, quote, tasted like cornbread. And Jane Esselstyn has a really wonderful recipe in, let's see, the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook. And it is a kale-infused corn muffin with jalapeno salsa in it. And they come out beautifully every time, and everyone loves them. So I think we have to say goodbye to some family traditions and create new ones with being whole food, plant-based, no oil. So I hope that that is helpful. And Mary, if you ever have any questions, feel free to email me at char@rouxbe.com. I'm always happy to answer any questions that any student might have. This is from Ann E. And she wants to know if there are any suggestions for party foods that everyone will eat. Well, I will say this. A crudité platter is a crudité platter is a crudité platter. You can make a luscious hummus with beautiful vegetables. And trust me when I tell you that it will be the number one thing that people will eat. A beautiful, beautiful fruit salad. There's a recipe that we have for a chocolate ganache torte which people report that they take to parties, and it's the first thing that is gone, and everyone absolutely loves it. So there is that as well. I think that also look at pasta dishes, because a whole wheat pasta and some vegetables with a traditional red sauce are always a big hit. And there is a recipe in Rouxbe for a plant-based Parmesan cheese, which gives perfect flavoring, and it's got some nuts, some walnuts in it, and it also has some, of course, nutritional yeast. So there's that. That might be very helpful to you. Whatever it is, make it look beautiful, make it look special. And I learned something very interesting a couple of weeks ago. I made a big platter. I made a couple of snackle boxes, and pardon me, I made a couple of snackle boxes and did not use the word vegan. And I made some beautiful cheeses that were all plant-based. And I described them as being cashew cheese. And there was not one piece of the cashew cheese left. The word vegan can sometimes scare people. So it's all a matter of how you describe things. So if you made a charcuterie tray with beautiful plant-based or cashew cheeses, people will eat them up. And it was really surprising to see how everyone ate every morsel of that cheese. So not sure if you're in the Plant Pro program, but your final assignment, your capstone assignment, is to plan a party and make 5 dishes. So that's another exciting thing to look forward to. Let's see. Okay, this is from, I think, let me see. I'm sorry for bending down if you're having to see the top of my head. I think what I'm going to do, pardon me, Patrick, is just do this because this is much easier. I don't know why I didn't think of this in the bath. I tried chocolate, truffle, hemp seed. It did not firm up for me. Do you have a trick? I have never made that before, so I don't think I have a trick, and I don't usually cook with hemp seed at all. That might be a good question for us to send along to Chef Fran, and I think she would probably be the best person to answer that for you. This is the best question because it's my favorite question. Because so many times I'll hear someone say, and it's sugar-free, there's no sugar in it. What they want to say is that there are no refined sugars in it. But whether you're using something like dates to add sweetness, or you're using a coconut sugar or whatever, there's still an ose in that. For example, fructose, which is a sugar. So I think you have to be really careful about reading labels. And I'm not sure that the yeast also list in ingredients came sugar or other sweetener. You know, I think that it's just.
Can you refresh that page for me?
Which page? The computer?
The questions.
Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Go. Okay. All right. Hold on. All right, I think I'm good. Okay. All right, I had a little computer glitch here. I'm sorry about that, and I am back 100%. Hopefully, all of these questions will work out well for you. How much protein, carbs, and fat should we aim for in managing diabetes on a whole food plant-based diet? That is a question that I would have you direct to your nutritionist, registered dietitian, or practitioner. Because I'm not exactly sure if you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, if you're insulin dependent, if you're taking an oral anti-glycemic. So I'm going to skip over that question. You no longer can eat beets. What can you substitute with? I'm thinking of Jerusalem artichokes. You could, beets are so good for you. If you can still eat the greens to the beets, which are the first cousin of chard, then I think that would be something that would be very helpful to you. In terms of substituting in recipes, you could use purple sweet potatoes. It might give it the same appearance, and they're also just as nutrient dense. And the darker and more colorful that a vegetable is, the more nutrients and antioxidants in this case. So that would be my recommendation. Also, regular purple potatoes would also work as well. All right. This is a question from Kama. Thank you very much. What is the best way to ensure I don't run sticky ingredient recipes such as black bean burgers and gluten-free pizza crust cooked in a pan on the stone without using oil? Well, I would put a piece of parchment paper on the bottom of your pan if you're air frying them as well. I find air frying, because of the way that it's a conduction stove in reality, only smaller, but the way the air circulates really helps to brown and add a crispiness that you don't sometimes find when you're cooking whole food plant-based. The other thing is, if you're using a conventional oven, you want to put everything on the middle rack. And I also suggest that you get an oven thermometer to make sure that the readout on your stove top is the same as the internal temperature of your your oven rather. So I hope that helps. This is another very good question about using almond butter in a pie crust. I personally find that between cashew butter and almond butter, that almond butter has a more neutral taste. To me, cashew butter tastes very sweet. However, I have used it in pie crust and it tastes virtually the same. You're not going to use any almond extracts or anything like that. Remember that you've got vanilla, and let's say if it's an apple pie, you've got some vanilla and some fresh fruit and maybe a little maple syrup to help sweeten it up a little bit. I say try it out and see how you like it. And it works, but I'm going to say that it's a little bit of practice. Because it's a new way of cooking. So I think that's good. And we are going to our last question. Why freeze the nut butter? Well, if you look at recipes for fancy pie crusts, you always have ice cold butter that's cut into cubes. So if you don't freeze this, you're not going to get the same consistency of your pie crust. Trust me when I tell you that you want to cut them up so that the fat emulsifies evenly throughout the recipe. If you just threw in a blob, it would be harder for you to get the texture, and you might over knead the dough, and that's something that you definitely don't want to do. So I think that we have answered all of
questions.
Okay. Boop, boop, boop. When living in Germany, I was told not to eat leftover mushrooms or spinach. Wow. Rip Esselstyn has a great video up today because it's all leftovers for his dinners on the porch. And mushrooms and spinach were leftover dinners. That's funny. I have avoided eating them if they are leftover or not eaten the day they were cooking. What do you practice? A lot of people who are plant-based save their leftovers, and then they have a night where they record they make a leftover dinner. It's a wonderful, fun dinner. And again, go to Rip Esselstyn's page today. He made pizza with his leftover vegetables, and they looked absolutely delicious. So I think we have one more from Victoria M. Her husband brought home a chayote. And have you tried this? Any suggestions? Chayote, I know it is a different name. It's a small green squash that looks a lot like a green pear. And all I do with it is dice it or slice it and either do a a no oil saute, or I'll just boil it or steam it, and it makes a beautiful, beautiful vegetable. So good for your husband for doing that. And I like hearing all of these kinds of good and exciting things going on. This coming Thursday, there will be a live event with Dr. Deb. So I hope that some of you will be tuning in for that. Okay. We have one more great question. I'm saving the best until the last. And when you are a Rouxbe student, whether you are a Rouxbe student to want to cook better for yourself and your family, for some people, it becomes the trajectory for starting a new business or whatever. So the question is, how can you make a business out of whole food, plant-based, no oil? I'm going to give you two very fun and easy suggestions. And the first one is, think of everybody you have met since your second grade class who you still know, and write them a little note. You can email it, but if you want to go OG, a handwritten note goes a long way. And tell them that you have a new endeavor where you're having cooking parties in people's homes. Would they like to host a party? And then they'll call you up and say, oh my God, yes. And you tell them what your fee is going to be. And what I usually do when I do home parties is I do not charge the hostess, because I figure they're opening their home, they're letting us use their kitchen, we're storing stuff in their refrigerator, and it's just a kind and gracious thing to do. And then you're going to do a price out of how much your ingredients will cost you, because you're going to bring all of the ingredients with you, because you want to make this party very easy for the hostess. And you have recipes that you have created. They're encased in plastic, so you can use them over and they stay neat and clean. And I can tell you that when I first started doing this 9 years ago, I charged $65 a person. And the parties are 2 hours long. You clean up, you go. They have a little party and they enjoy all of the food that they make. Before you even plan the party, you ask the hostess what kinds of things she and her guests might like. That's one way to do it. And then the other way to do it is to market yourself, to send letters to, for example, as you know, I'm a representative of the Charlie Cart. There are 500 Charlie Carts throughout America. Find out where they are in your community. There are 4 in Philadelphia, 3 in Cleveland. The originals were in Berkeley, California. Write the librarian a note telling her or him that you are interested in teaching cooking classes. Give them an itinerary of what you teach, how much you will charge. Do they supply the groceries? Will you supply the groceries, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that from my own experience, that following your passion and seeing a need in a community, at the risk of sounding corny, I have to turn away a lot of quote, quote, business because I'm so busy. But my most favorite thing to do is to work on the Charlie Cart when I'm not grading papers here. So there's a wonderful book that is called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And if you type that title in on Amazon, it will give you a lot of good pointers. But yes, you can make a career out of being a whole food plant-based chef. We have a set of registered nurses in Southern Florida who are doing great things. We have a school teacher who teaches cooking throughout Buffalo. So there are just lots and lots of opportunities, but you have to make them happen. But do it with love and make sure that you just want to be there to help other people enjoy the benefits of eating a whole food plant-based diet, which for me was life-changing. So I'm going to go back to my goodbye. Don't forget to check in with Chef Deb on Thursday afternoon. And thank you so much for your patience and everything else today. And I wish you well from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, Philadelphia. I'm Char Nolan. Have a great day.